Hi everyone, today we have the pleasure of meeting Bruce Lowe from San Francisco, California. Hi Bruce, we're so glad to have you here with us today and sharing your thoughts. First, to start off with, do you mind introducing yourself and who you are?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Bruce Lowe. I'm the official Republican nominee running to unseat Nancy Pelosi and represent San Francisco in Congress. I'm a Bay Area native. I am also a UC Berkeley graduate, and I'm a business owner here in San Francisco. I am running because of the urgency of the problems that we face here, not only in San Francisco, but nationwide. I think that crime, homelessness, the drug problems are all problems that are all very visible in San Francisco. And we have known about these problems that have reached crisis levels here, but we're trying to stop this from becoming the norm in California and nationwide. Um, we've also we're also experiencing a lot of problems with um, economic problems, people not being able to achieve the American dream, opportunities denied to young people like you and me. So that is why I am running.
I want to first kick in with talking a little bit about your childhood. Where'd you grow up in and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so as I said, I grew up in the Bay Area, and the Bay Area, when I grew up, was a wonderful place to grow up in. I could not have asked for a better place to grow up in. Safe neighborhoods, great schools, some of the best public schools in the country, and I got a great education, a public school education from K through 12, and then I went to UC Berkeley, which is another public school funded by taxpayer dollars, and these are all top-notch schools. And really, crime and drugs weren't a problem that we had to deal with. These were all faraway issues that maybe we heard about in the news, but these problems have been brought home. And unfortunately, in the Bay Area, these problems are becoming more and more severe to the point where you cannot live and not see these problems on the streets. So, part of the reason I'm fighting is because I think that I had the best of what the American dream had to offer, but now that dream is dying off.
And when do you think it started to die off?
Um, that's a good question. I think that it's been going through a slow decline, and then COVID really unveiled everything. We saw the true depth of how bad things have gotten during COVID when the economic prosperity of the 2010s wore off, and suddenly we're left with nothing but the problems.
You've already touched on this a little bit, but what are the top issues facing San Francisco right now? And more importantly, how do you plan to address them?
Right. So, homelessness, crime, drugs, these are all very, very related issues. You cannot talk about one without really talking about the other. Now, San Francisco receives a lot of federal money in order to deal with these issues. I'm talking about what we can do at the federal level rather at the state or local level because the position I am running for is a federal position. I think that we are actually receiving ample resources to deal with these problems. San Francisco receives $70,000 to $80,000 per year per person in order to deal with the homeless crisis. Yet we're seeing these tent cities, we're seeing rampant drug use, we're seeing out of control crime. Now, why is that? I don't think that the money is being spent correctly. Nancy Pelosi brings a bunch of money into San Francisco, but that money is money with no strings attached. And that money is simply squandered or, laundered, I should say, by the local corrupt establishment. There are a lot of lax crime laws, soft on crime laws that are exacerbated by weak DAs who refuse to prosecute criminals. You have drugs that are pouring into the country that are incredibly destructive, like fentanyl, and all of this leads to overdoses, people that cannot break the cycle of addiction that remain onto the streets, and ultimately they die. And these drugs, they cause crime, and then because of these problems, people move out of San Francisco. It leads to a very self-destructive loop in which the money that can be brought in to save San Francisco is no longer there, and we keep bringing in federal dollars that keep getting wasted. And it really seems like a very difficult problem to solve. But I think the very first thing we need to do is make sure that every single dollar that is given to San Francisco to solve this problem actually goes to solving this problem. And we can work with local leaders in order to do so.
That leads on to my next question, which is, can you tell us a little bit about your values and what impacted those values?
Yes, absolutely. So I think my values are the family values that made America great in the post-World War II era all the way up until today. I don't think these values have really died out, but these values include the belief that America is a land of opportunity, the belief that we should have an equality of opportunity and not an equality of outcome. And what that means is that making sure that people have a fair shot at achieving the American dream, but not necessarily leveling the playing field so that everybody ends up at the same place. We all have the ability to choose our destiny, but that doesn't mean that the government should weight the dice in favor of some people just so that everybody can get to the same place. So I do believe in the equality of opportunity and trying to give as many people a fair chance as possible. Another value that I hold very deeply is family values here. The family unit is the building block of society, and families need to be given an environment in which they can flourish. That means safe neighborhoods, good schools, the environment in which I grew up in. If you don't have a safe neighborhood, how can you have kids? How can you build a community? If you don't have good schools, how can our next generation be given a good foundation on which they can build upon to start lives of their own?
As someone from a younger generation, there's this ongoing debate about not having enough experience to uphold major rules. What is your response to those comments?
Yeah, so you see Congress today. I think the average age of the House of Representatives is over 55. The average age of the Senate is over 60 or even 65, which is retirement age in most countries. Now, what you just said, young people believing that young people don't have the experience in order to change the world and actually affect change, has resulted in this gerontocracy in Congress and in leadership. You have people that are too old to work in most countries, that are making decisions that are going to impact the next generation and impact our entire country. If history is any lesson, young people have been the leaders of revolutions and not the old. If you look at the American Revolution, Thomas Jefferson was just a young man when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Joan of Arc was 16 years old when she defeated the English and liberated Orleans. Augustus Caesar was 30 when he founded the Roman Empire. So I don't understand why people think that young people do not have the experience or do not have the ability to change history when we have changed history so many times. In fact, I think that if there is change that comes in America, it has to come from the younger generation.
So you believe in giving a lot of opportunities to the younger generation for them to flourish and exercise their, imagination and creativity.
If we don't give opportunities to the younger generation in order to exercise their creativity and let them show their potential, then we've lost as a country.
Let's touch on a little about the Asian American community specifically. As an Asian American, what is your vision for the future Asian American community?
Well, that's a very open-ended question. So Asian Americans are one of the fastest growing demographics in the United States, especially here in California. We've been here for more than 150 years. The story of Asian Americans is the story of San Francisco. We've been here in San Francisco since day one, building the infrastructure of this country. Back then, we built the Transcontinental Railroad. Now we're building Silicon Valley, and we're building the next AI revolution. I think it's time that we have a voice in this country and to have our interests heard and represented by people that actually know what we want and are willing to speak up for it.
On your website, I saw that you were part of an organization. It was a couple of years back, but you were helping distribute pepper spray to those living in Chinatown. Can you share some of the things you're doing to support the Asian American community right now?
Yes. So just wanted to clarify a little bit. That wasn't really an organization. That was me. So back then in 2021, I'm sure that you heard, but there was a violent epidemic of assaults against Asian Americans. And in San Francisco, we were no exception. There was incredibly disgusting, cold-blooded murder of an old Thai man, an 84-year-old grandpa in San Francisco, by somebody who had no reason to attack him, didn't want money. It wasn't a robbery, just simply pushed this old man down where he suffered a concussion and he later died from hemorrhaging of the brain. This disgusting attack was dismissed by the district attorney, saying that the perpetrator just had a temper tantrum. And this really inflamed many members of the community to do something. There were a lot of protests, there were a lot of marches, people wrote a lot of letters to legislators, but that doesn't solve the problem. And I'm always a man of action rather than a man of words. It's great, I think that all these marches and these demonstrations and all this lobbying of legislators is great, and I encourage them to do it. But I think that we need action, and we need something practical, something immediate in order to stop this problem. Otherwise, it's all just talk, it's all performative. So with a couple of friends, we gathered together a pretty sizable group of volunteers. I want to say a dozen or maybe even more than that of people to distribute pepper sprays in Chinatown, in Portsmouth Square, the front porch of Chinatown in San Francisco, in order to give these seniors a practical, non-lethal self-defense weapon which they could use to fend off potential attackers. I think it's a good medium because pepper spray is a merely defensive weapon, right? It's not a non-lethal weapon, but it's a very effective weapon. So we were able to distribute many thousands of units of pepper spray in 2 hours. We were able to demonstrate that. And I think that really illustrates my style. Instead of talking or doing marches and hoping to gain other people's sympathies, I would rather take action and try to solve the problem however I can.
That's very cool. Thank you. I guess this is like more of a personal question, because I think the Asian stereotype is like quiet and like they go with the rule, they go with the flow. Do you think that's a problem in San Francisco right now? Like the Asian American community is not stepping up and like voicing themselves, and they're just like kind of going with whatever other people say.
It's always been a problem. It's always been a problem, and a problem that a stereotype that I think that I'm challenging very well.
What are your plans for the future?
Well, for the next 6 months or so, I am going to be running this campaign. I don't see this campaign as merely a campaign to get our voices heard. I see this campaign as a part of something larger. Look, I wouldn't be running if I wasn't trying to win, even though I know it's a long shot. We're trying to win because I think that we've had enough of Nancy Pelosi and what the Democrats have done to San Francisco and California and the country. They have promoted inequality, economic inequality. They have promoted racial inequality. They have promoted discrimination in terms of admissions in hiring. They have exploited this country for their own personal wealth. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to see a change. I'd like to see different voices get involved in government, especially the young, especially the Asians. I was looking through some voter data before the primary election, and there's two groups that were very, very underrepresented when it came to being registered voters. I think you can guess which two groups they were. The young and the Asians. Only about 1 in 5 of both of those groups vote at all. So our voices are quite literally not being heard. And if we can get these groups to turn out in the election, well, that would be awesome. And that would be one giant step forward to getting our voices heard in government and our interests represented.
Definitely agree with you on that. I think that's very important, getting our voices heard and just telling the public what we think.
Yes.
This is a message for the younger people out there who want to make a change. Do you have like a piece of advice for them? For those who want to make a change in their community, but their age is still in the younger generation?
Well, this is what I would say to them. When I started this campaign, I was 26 years old. I mean, I'm 27 now, but the point is that I came in as a political newcomer, and in that time, we secured the Republican nomination, the California Republican Party endorsement. Not only did we run a campaign, we ran possibly the most organized and best campaign in the Bay Area of all the candidates here in the Bay Area. And we ran a campaign that took the social media world by storm. We raised more money than any other Bay Area candidate. We actually ran a campaign that got picked up by other news outlets, by even national media. And we were able to win the primary in San Francisco in an open primary system, which means that I wasn't competing against only Republicans. I competed against 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans and came out on top, many of whom were in their 60s or 70s or had years of political experience. We did all this in San Francisco, one of the bluest, one of the most Democrat-controlled cities in the country. Now, if I'm able to do it, I don't see why anybody else wouldn't be able to do it either. And people think that I really came out of nowhere, but the thing is, I've been involved for years. I've been involved in community activism ever since 2014, when SCA 5 was on the Senate floor of the California State Legislature. I've been working to represent our interests and making sure that our communities are represented and heard. So my advice to them is don't be afraid and just get started.
I guess a burning question, Simon, is what do you think Nancy Pelosi is not doing to make San Francisco a better place?
Well, she doesn't care about San Francisco. Nancy Pelosi is in the office for herself. People always ask me, Bruce, why is Nancy Pelosi running again? She's been in Congress for nearly 40 years. She's 84 years old. She's been Speaker of the House twice. Why does she still want to run? What does she want to do? Well, the answer is she wants to hand over power to her daughter, Christine Pelosi, in basically creating a political dynasty, which is profoundly offensive to anybody who believes in democracy. Nancy Pelosi attacks Donald Trump all the time for being anti-democracy, for being authoritarian. But who's the real anti-democracy person here when she's trying to basically pass on power to somebody who's not remotely qualified for the position, who's been groomed for this position probably years or even decades in the making? So she's really not doing anything. What she's interested in is building her family power, her family wealth. She's really one of the most successful insider traders in history. She buys and sells stocks based on laws that she's going to pass. She doesn't care about San Francisco. She never returns to San Francisco. And when she does, it's always under armed guard. Every time she comes back to San Francisco, she's got like a convoy of security around her every single time. So I can't really say that she belongs. She even visits the district as an ordinary citizen. She doesn't really care about San Francisco. She spends most of her time in Washington, D.C. or Napa, but not here in San Francisco, the place where she supposedly represents.
All right, thank you so much for that. I think that wraps up our time for today. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us again on behalf of Asian American News Network. We really loved hearing your stories and things that you're doing, and wish you best of luck in the future.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.